Please pray with me. More of you, O Christ, less of me. More of you, O Christ, less of me. More of you, O Christ, less of me. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts draw us closer to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no river wide enough, ain't no valley low enough to keep me from getting to you, babe. Oh, I love you. I started to sing this as a group song. We might have been able to pull it off. Maybe it's that familiar. So mountaintop experiences. And thanks so much, Sharon, for saying, what do you mean by that? Because I realize that not every generation, everybody has that. But it is Black History Month. And it's hard not to think about Reverend Dr. King saying, I have been to the mountaintop. I have been to the mountaintop. And this was in a sermon the night before he was shot down. And he said, I may not get there with you, but I have been to the mountaintop. Now, Reverend Dr. King most assuredly knew this scripture, and he also knew the story of Moses and the burning bush on the top of Mount Sinai. And he may have even heard the phrase that I was taught in seminary, that Mount Sinai in the Hebrew Bible is the architectonic center of the universe. I don't know if his seminary professor said that. Mine did. And we all went, the architectonic center of the universe. I feel exactly the same way. But what they mean by that is that every time in the Bible somebody goes up on a mountain, something special happens. That's what that means. That means that when we remove ourselves from the ordinary plane of our lives and we go to higher ground or to different ground, that's why I-5 is amazing, Nancy, because that is not different or higher ground. That is actually the most mundane of ground. In fact, annoyingly mundane. I love that. Mountaintop experience on I-5. Love it. But in general, in the Bible, they set these things in odd places. And so when all the Gospels tell us that Jesus takes his kind of core group of disciples up on the mountain and there is this spiritual experience, the disciples all react in different ways. In this particular case, Peter wants to build booths so they can just stay there forever. And I have to say, Colleen, this is a little bit like you could have stayed there forever, one with that flower. Right? This is one of our things, if we have this kind of peak spiritual experience, we'd like to just stay in it all the time. And of course, that is never possible. We are humans, we are mortals, and we must come down from the mountain. We must go out of the garden. We have to get off the freeway and confront what our real life is. So Peter's idea of, well, let's just stick around. And let's not go back and deal with all those people who are sick and they want stuff, and some of them are nasty, and some of them are, I don't want to be around all those. Peter would like to just stay on the mountaintop with Jesus and the favorite disciples and live a happy little life. Anybody feel that way sometimes? Now, you may not be actually on a mountaintop, but you may just be, in your living room. And, basically, I'm going to watch bad TV, eat bad food, and not watch the news and not care about what anybody else thinks. I think that is a kind of mountaintop experience. I wouldn't say it's exactly soul-stirring, but it might be soul-reviving. Every once in a while, we just kind of need to go down in a pit and sit there. So I didn't share my mountaintop experience when we were talking, because my mountaintop experience basically happens in the bottom of a canyon. And Bonnie mentioned that I'm going to the Monastery of Christ in the Desert. Anybody here ever seen a painting by George O'Keeffe? Most of them were painted in this canyon. So the canyon where the Monastery of Christ in the Desert is has the Chama River running through it, these gorgeous mesas all around. And my crackpot theory about why this place seems so fertile, besides the fact that it is really remote, it's 2 hours past a cell phone signal. This is wonderful. You get through Espanola and then your phone dies and you're like, oh, man, I have passed the digital leash. I'm done. I'm out. I'm free. Don't even need Harriet Tubman, just need to go to the desert. I can get there on my own in a rental car. So you get out there, and there's something about this canyon. I don't know what it is, but I had this realization at one point when I was sitting and looking at the mesas and hearing the river gurgling and the Canada geese racking around. They make a lot of noise. And I thought, as I was looking at the geology of the walls, if you're in the bottom of a canyon, you've gone back in time. You're back in geological time. I could see on the walls of the canyon, you know, it's like the 21st century's at the top. I've gone down into a deeper, older place. And maybe that's why it feels so different. And maybe that's why you feel like you can almost hear native peoples living there who lived there for many, 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 many millennia. And the Spanish didn't even come there until pretty late. So this is a very special canyon. And when you go back in time, when you go to a place that isn't your ordinary life, sometimes we become a little more open. I won't name you for the recording, but our friend in the room who said that sometimes these come with chemical assistance. That's another way to go to the mountaintop. It makes a difference if we take time. And in all of the Gospels, this story is always there because I think there is not only a resonance with the Hebrew Bible, but also because once Jesus goes up to the top of the mountaintop, and we have this spiritual experience with the core group of disciples. By the way, in the Gospel of Mark, the disciples all fall asleep. They don't even want to stay there. They just go to sleep. Useless. But we always have this story because after this, Jesus begins his ministry. So the question is, what do we do after we have one of these experiences? How do we incorporate whatever we got from it? Maybe the lesson, like Scott says, you're not alone. And maybe it's okay to be alone. You don't have to go run get everybody to come share it with you. It could be just for you. And that's probably a pretty deep spiritual lesson, right? Nancy, it could be in the strangest places, right? Colleen, nature. You and the daisies or whatever that flower was, you're one. There's no question about it. And Sharon, I love your story so much because I know that garden. I remember when it was built. And one of the connections you and I have is that I'm part of that history, and you revere some of that history, and you revere that history in general. And that just warms my heart to know that what I went through in my 20s matters to you. And I think for all of us, not to get nostalgic like Peter and just want to sit there in the thing, but to know where we came from, to know that there are people who went before us, to know that there are folks who lived through some things and figured out some things, and that we are not alone. This is the main message. Even when you are alone in the lodge, alone in the car, alone in the AIDS Memorial Garden, alone with that flower. You notice nearly all of these you're alone. This is not usually a shared experience. When we're alone, there's more to it. There are ancestors whose witness strengthens us and enlivens us. Whether it's Pocahontas or Jesus, whether it's all the HIV/AIDS activists, no matter who it is, we are not alone. And in some cases, it is the essence of the very Holy One. However you experience that, whether you call that God, whether you call that Jesus, whether you call it holy oneness, whether it's higher power, whatever your language is, that experience is what carries you through whatever's next when you come away from that place. So if we remember those experiences and we make ourselves available to have those experiences, later in his ministry, Jesus is constantly trying to get away to pray. Constantly. It's a trope in all the Gospels. He went away to be by himself in a place, and the crowd found him again. Trust me, I really understand this problem. This is why I go to remote New Mexico every once in a while, where I literally can't be found. And I think that there is a sense when we're about to have a really big experience. I love your story about meditating on fear and love and then finding out you're pregnant. Now, I don't really believe in an interventionist God, but come on, that was prep. Maybe your body knew. I'm going to have to understand the relationship of fear and love because I'm about to be a parent. Because those two things are part and parcel of being a parent. Unbelievable love. Hi, Chivi. Everybody meet Chivi, our new director of the kitchen. She's amazing. So those mountaintop experiences, that's what we take with us. When we come back to earth, when we come back to the mundane things, when we come back to traffic in Fresno, when we come back to whatever it is that is sort of baseline ordinary, when we climb out of the canyon, when we come down off the mountain, when we aren't meditating, when we aren't in the AIDS Memorial Grove, when we aren't in any of these places, that is what can sustain you when the going gets tough. Now, I don't know how Brian McLaren is going to do this Life After Doom, but I did do a retreat with him for a week once, and my crackpot theory is, and we'll see if this turns out to be true, is that in some ways, everything he preaches is a version of this sermon. Take those amazing experiences and apply them to life. And recognize that they can happen anywhere, to anybody, at any time, if we're just willing to listen, to stay awake, to listen, to stay awake, to be ready. May it be so. Amen.